Hey folks, Joe Valley here. Welcome to another episode of the Quiet Life Podcast. Today's podcast is sponsored by My Amazon Guy. I know the founder, Stephen Pope, personally. You may have seen him all over YouTube sharing free educational content. If you want to learn everything you need to know about promoting products on Amazon, just go to YouTube and search for My Amazon Guy. You can also find Stephen at myamazonguy.com. He will help you level up your PPC, your SEO, your design, and manage your entire Amazon catalog. Check him out at myamazonguy.com. Second thing here is I want to give a shout out to Walker Dybel, author of Buy Then Build. Walker's a friend of mine. He's an advisor here at Quiet Light, and he also runs Buy Then Build. Walker just became a Wall Street Journal best-selling author. Also USA Today, or no, there's another thing in there, but the Wall Street Journal is the most impressive aspect of it. Wall Street Journal best-selling author, and he runs buythenbuild.com. If you are looking to buy a business and you want the fast track to getting it done and getting it done right, Walker's helped over with $90 million in acquisitions through Buy Then Build. Check it out at buythenbuild.com. Now, on to today's podcast. Today's podcast is all about whether you should work with an agency or not, and what questions you need to ask them. I'm talking with Mina Elias. Mina owns an agency called Trivium. It's triviumco.com. Mina is a multiple seven-figure Amazon business owner, an engineer by trade, by training, and eventually started his own agency as well. Now he's got 60 to 70 clients, but he does a lot of educational content on whether or not you should be working with an agency, what questions to ask, what to expect, what kind of guardrails to put on the agency in terms of if they're going to double the spending, what kind of ROAS they need to have and things of that nature. We don't really mince words very much here. We get right into it. I question whether somebody should hire an agency or whether they should bring it in-house or hire a VA, and he addresses that quite clearly. He also talks about the fact that you should hire consultants before hiring an agency so that you can know what questions to ask and become educated yourself, not just on what questions to ask, but you need to get as deep an understanding of how to do your own PPC as well. And it's mostly Amazon PPC that we're talking about here. Very detailed. He's a very experienced guy. His name is Mina Elias. And again, he runs triviumco.com. Let's take a listen. Mina, welcome to the Quiet Life Podcast. How are you?
Great, man. Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
Man, we've been bouncing around the industry together, never met face-to-face, but we've had lots of calls, lots of emails. And it seems like I'm seeing you all over social media now. You're talking, you're presenting, you're on podcasts, you're doing some pretty incredible things, and mostly around the agency side of the business. So let's tell the audience, give a little bit of background for yourself, please. Share what your full backstory is.
Okay, I'll give you the elevator background so we don't bore everyone. But my background is in chemical engineering and chemistry. I came to America in 2011 to go to college, got my bachelor's and master's in engineering, worked up the corporate ladder. I was working in new product development for a medical devices company, Medtronic, and then moved around because I just was not happy, doing what I was doing as an engineer. And then after I think third or fourth engineering job, I was like, dude, I mean, it would be insanity to keep trying the same thing and thinking that there's going to be a different outcome. And so I decided to start a supplement brand, not because, Amazon or anything like that, just because I am a huge fanatic of supplements. You should look at my cabinets. I have like 20 different supplements, creatine, glutamine. I'm always making cocktails every day. And I just love supplements. It's like biohacking and that kind of stuff. And so I started this brand. I was an MMA fighter and I wanted to create an electrolyte powder that didn't have sugar. And everything that I found online had sugar. It had low sodium, which for me as a fighter, sodium was very, very important. And I was like dry scooping chicken broth at night after training to rehydrate, because it's 3 hours of like sweating intensely. And then after I created the brand, someone messaged me and said, "Hey, I have an MMA event. I'd love for you to come bring your stuff and showcase at the event." I made the 40 bags. I showcased at the event. I sold 25 of them, and people said, "Where can I buy this?" and I didn't have an answer. And so I lied and I said I was going to get it on Amazon. It's going to be on Amazon soon. And that's what got me into the Amazon space, is that one lie. So I got completely obsessed, and I'm like, I can't let everyone down. I already told them I was going to do this, and immersed myself in the Amazon world. Got the product up there 3 weeks after that event. Started selling, and I noticed that the two main levers that I could pull to increase my sales was PPC and reviews. So I really doubled down on those things. And one thing that I realized was PPC is a very like analytical, pattern recognition, Excel sheet type of thing, which I was good at because as an engineer. And so as I got better and better, I noticed I was in the Facebook groups asking questions, and I noticed people were asking some of the questions I thought I had answers to. So I gave my opinion. I said, I've tried this, I've tried that. This is what happened. That's what happened. And then it felt like somewhat overnight, I became everyone's like favorite PPC guy. And all I was doing was just sharing my experience. I wasn't giving any like, this is the way to do it, this is a guide, I'm like your savior. I was like, I just spent 10 grand in the last week trying these different things, and this is the outcome. This is what happened when I put 20 keywords in one campaign. It didn't work out, things like that. And that continued to happen. I was sharing value, and 2020 hit, COVID hit, and I'm like, you know what, I'm staying home. I really think I want to add a lot of value and become like, micro famous, in the Amazon space. So I hopped on 50, 60 podcasts once a week. And then I shared as much value as I can. I really like try to jam pack everything I can, because I know there's a few ways you can be famous. One of them is like, you put out a sex tape. I wasn't interested in doing that. Another one is, being like an entertainer. And then one of them is adding a lot of value. And I figured this is probably what I can do is add a ton of value. And I went down that rabbit hole, and I became, more and more known for PPC. And an aggregator, probably someone you've dealt with, hit me up and they said, we need training for our team, but we want to test you on a brand first to see if you can walk the walk. So they tested me on a brand, and I beat out like a bunch of other agencies that they had also hired for the same reason. And, I was like, you know what, like, yeah, maybe I'm good at supplements, but I am really great at this. And, I didn't have I wasn't married. The day I started my business, I said I was never going to be married to a business. I was always going to do what's right for my goals, which is complete and total freedom. So if tomorrow, like a TV show came and said, hey, we want you to be on this cooking show, we're going to make you 10 times more money, a fraction of the work, and you can have all the freedom that you still want, I do that. So I got into the agency space because I figured I'm passionate at it. I can be the best in the world at it, and I can add so much value that I'm going to get compensated according to that value. And that's how I became Trivium.
Good, man. Good. Thank you for first not doing the sex tape. I greatly appreciate that. If I recall, I mean, you've had multiple 7-figure businesses, and you've exited. How many have you exited as well?
Just one.
Just one. And was that with Jason here at Quiet Light?
No, it wasn't. I mean, I think I tried one of the other ones with you guys, but it was too small to exit.
Gotcha. Okay. On to like agencies and discussing agencies. A lot of folks in the audience own businesses or are trying to buy e-commerce businesses or FBA businesses, and they want to not do all of the daily work of promoting the product and think an agency is the solution to it. I've been doing this for over a decade, Mina, and I've had thousands of conversations, and half of the people say, I tried an agency and you're better off just keeping it in-house. And the other half say, yeah, definitely an agency is the way to go. Can you, now that you are an agency owner, and I know you've done presentations like this before, can you sort of address the top questions that somebody should be asking an agency before they make a commitment to them?
Yeah. So I think the best way to walk through the different aspects is like the easiest way first to evaluate this is let's say, what are our options? And the options are and it's going to be very budget dependent too. So if you're very low budget, your options are do it yourself, hire a VA, or do it yourself with the software, right? If you have somewhat of a medium budget,
what's your definition of a low budget and medium budget?
So a low budget, I would say, is you can't for the management aspect, you can't spend more than $1,000 a month
for the management aspect. So
Yeah.
that's
So
just
not
for
ad spend,
somebody.
like
Yeah. So
just for someone
you're paying somebody $1,000 a month, and then on top of that, you're
paying for the ad spend.
spending the ad spend. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So for management as a budget, $1,000 in that range, or up to it, is you can either do it yourself. You can hire like a virtual assistant, someone who is low skill but trainable. Train them, have them do the actions for you. Maybe utilize a software, not an automation. I would stay away from automation. I would focus on tools that it takes you 4 hours to manage your PPC. It's going to make it 1 hour, something like that.
What kind of tools are those?
I mean, Atomic is a good one. PPC Ninja is a good one. Basically, tools that have bulk action capabilities, where you can filter through a bunch of data. Say, okay, show me all of the keywords that have spent over $20, have not generated any sales in the last 14 days. Let me evaluate that, and then add negatives or whatever by a click of a button, sort of thing. So that's the kind of software. Basically, just a tool, like using Excel instead of using your notebook. That's kind of what I'm talking about.
And so for the lower budget, what kind of money, let's translate it into how much of an ad spend people would generally have if they're have a management fee of $1,000 a month to any agency, and you all price about the same. What's their PPC budget generally?
I wouldn't even look at that. I would look at your profit. I would say you're sub $5,000 a month in profit. If you're sub five, because it's all about how much can you reinvest in the business. So if you're spending 30 grand a month on ad spend, but your net profit at the end of the, and so you said, like, Mina, you had 7-figure business. I'm like, great, but it wasn't like a 7-figure profit. It was like,
Sure.
low 6-figure profit. So if you could be making a couple million a year with 5K a month in profits. You can't afford like a 2,500 a month agency, because you're what happens when you have like a low month or something, and now you need to buy more stock and you're completely out. So that's kind of what I would look at as the indicator is if you're doing $5,000 or less in profit, then you should have that low budget of 1,000.
Okay.
And again, it sucks because PPC is a huge pillar. It's basically half of your business. The other half is your conversion, but budget is budget. It's always going to hold us back at some point.
And when we're talking about this, and you're talking about PPC, I'm talking about agencies in general. Or do you recommend that you find an agency that is only focused on PPC, or something where they've got a variety of services that they offer under one umbrella?
Yeah. So that's a good question. So then you move on to the second tier, right? Which is agency, or maybe a skilled overseas employee. Now, the agency is going to become more of an advantage when they are like a specialist at PPC, and they have a team around PPC. With umbrella, I'm not going to say that they're all bad. I tend to stay away from umbrella no matter what I do. Like if I'm looking to do SEO for my business, if I find a marketing agency that does SEO on Facebook and Google and 700 other things, I'm going to be a little bit worried that they're not masters at their craft. So I think it's going to come down to, okay, how good are they? And so that's kind of the second thing, is the questions that you should be asking agencies before hiring is, are they gonna teach you, and what is their strategy? So if I can break down the strategy very clearly for you before we start, this is what we're gonna do. Here's the actions that we're gonna take. You can actually do this. So the way that I do things is I can tell you everything that needs to be done, and if you want, go ahead and do it yourself. Like here's all of our trade secrets. Go ahead and do it yourself. My value is not in the knowledge and secrets. It's in the execution. Is how refined is your team and your business that you can run these actions very consistently and notice patterns and recognize these trends in a cost efficient manner. So for us, like when we manage ads, we basically have 5 people on the account, not just one. And they're not all spending full time, right? They're 5 people fractionally, but because I have 67 or something clients, we are able to make that cost efficient, because it's like the Toyota model, right? Where it's like one guy only screws a nut, one guy only puts in the tire, one guy only does this thing. But because they're pumping out hundreds of thousands of cars, You can have one guy full-time just doing that. And so that's kind of where what you should be looking for as an advantage. So if an umbrella agency does have that sort of ability of like having a division where everyone is specialized at one thing, does it really well, can explain to you the strategy, and then also has that added benefit of having like a photography studio so they can help you with your content or whatever it is, then yeah, that's definitely an advantage. But if you notice that they're more of a generalist and they're not a master of one, then I would stay away from the umbrella. And then the second thing is, so back to the questions that you should be asking agencies, have a very clear identification of what the scope of work is, what the deliverables are. So scope of work is like, what are you going to do? What does that encompass? Let's be very clear on what you're going to do. The deliverables. So what are you going to deliver to me in terms of actions, in terms of reports? What are the expectations? So let's manage expectations from the beginning, because I think 90% of agency failures, regardless of like, is it a good agency or a bad agency, is from not managing expectations. I've been at fault many times for having unrealistic expectations when I hired an agency to build my website. And I'm like, I expected them to come up with this insane, like, Nike website. And they're like, yeah, but we never discussed this. This is like completely out of our expectations.
What if you got a new business owner that's, in the corporate world, and they've purchased this FBA business and they're wanting to run it on the side? They don't know what questions to ask.
Perfect. So I'm glad that you asked this question. That's not a good enough excuse. I think that's just a sad excuse, actually. There is plenty of people like me and who know what they're doing, and plenty of people on LinkedIn who are running ads for other brands that you can easily hire for hourly to show you what needs to be done. And so if you're in that position where you're like, Mina, I want to give off PPC because I just don't understand it, and it's not attractive to me, and I just want the experts to take care of it. It's almost like you're waiting to be conned by that mechanic, where you bring your car in with a check engine light, and he says, "Well, your engine needs like 6 replacement parts, and your whatever vacuum hose is broken," and you end up with a $2,000.
But I don't want to become a mechanic. That's why I'm going to the mechanic. So
exactly,
how do you find the one that you trust without becoming the mechanic in this case?
You have to understand PPC to a certain extent. So it's no longer acceptable for you to go hire an expert without knowing anything. So I think the first stop for you is, let's say you find someone for $100 an hour to consult you. You just type in Amazon PPC on LinkedIn. You'll find hundreds of people that manage PPC for different businesses. And maybe you find some brands that you're a little bit familiar with, or you look at their Amazon sales and they're doing well on Amazon. And you message that guy and say, hey, I would love to pay for a little bit of your time, once a week or something, to just show me how Amazon advertising works. That's it. This guy, now the beauty is, this guy has no incentive to sell you on anything, because they're working a 9-to-5 job. They're managing Amazon ads. They know what they're doing, and you're looking to be educated. Now, I would do this with 2 or 3 different people to get 2 or 3 different perspectives. And I'm sure you've done this, like where you start to get into something, and so you hit up like 4 or 5 different agencies, and you hear like different sales pitches, and you're like, this one mentioned this one mentioned that, and you kind of start getting a full picture. You just do that, but with consultants. And so that's where I would start. Is you can't have zero knowledge. You have to have at least some knowledge, so that when the mechanic comes and says, hey, the check engine light is on, you have this and that, you're like, hey, but you did not plug in the car computer. What are the codes? And then he's going to be like, oh, this guy knows what he's talking about. Well, okay, here are the codes. He's like, okay, that has nothing to do with the actual engine parts. Why are you saying this? This guy's a con. This other guy shows you the computer, says, hey, check the computer. There you go. These are the 3 codes. You can Google the codes, and this is what needs to happen. And then you're like, okay, cool. Now you know what needs to happen. And so that would be my first step. If you are someone who's looking to acquire a business, you don't understand anything about Amazon advertising, find a few people who have no incentive. I might have an incentive to sell you, right? So I'm not saying, don't trust me, but as an agency owner, I might be telling you some things, that are like, hey, you should do this, you should do that. oh, this is so hard, you should just hire us. And of course, I've seen so many of those agency owners who will complicate and fluff and talk super high level, and I'm like, I don't understand it enough. I just want to hire these people. Stay away from.
I like it.
Yeah.
I like the idea of hiring a consultant for an hour or two, or multiple consultants. You spend $1,000, you're going to get a great education to help you discern which agency is the best option. Can we touch on how agencies get paid? Right, you just talked about the flat fee, but how do they generally, on average, get paid?
So I think there's a few models. One of them is a percentage of spend, and that's the one that I don't understand at all. And I think so. Nick Shackelford, right? He mentioned the story when he used to work at Apple, and they used to penalize him if he did not burn through all of that budget, because then they would take away that budget. So I think that's where it started. It might have started where you were penalized if you didn't spend all of the money, and so agencies got like a percentage of spend as a bonus.
Terrible idea.
That
wouldn't do it either.
That model does not work. I mean, as a brand, why would I ever pay you a percentage of what I'm spending? Because you could just rack up a huge bill and not convert well, and then be like, okay, there you go. So the other one is just a straight up percentage of revenue. I think that one is all right. I personally wouldn't go for it due to the volatility of like, what happens if you run out of stock or your conversion rate tanks because you got 10 negative reviews, or you increased your price by 1.5 because you felt like it. Then so that one is not like a great option either. Then you're left with a combination of, you either do a flat rate, which is like, okay, we're managing 3 products for you. This is how much it's going to cost for our work, and our incentive to perform well is to keep you so you don't churn. And these will generally be a flat rate with very low commitment, like maybe a 3-month commitment or something, then month to month, versus like a 12-month commitment. And then there's the hybrid of the flat fee plus a percentage, which sometimes I like to do with certain brands that I feel like we can add value more than just like ads, where it'll be like, hey, it's a flat fee and maybe give us a percentage of the new revenue we generate, because I feel like we can really like scale this. And
how
so,
do you measure the new revenue? There's inside of Seller Central and the PPC accounts, you can measure how measurable is everything in terms of new revenue or orders that are generated from the PPC advertising, and why not just pay per order, something like that?
Yeah. So this would, I think, only I would like it if it's total new revenue. So if you're doing $50,000 a month in revenue and we take you to 100,000, that net would be 50. And you can like take an average based on like the last 3 months. So on the last 3 months before you started using us, you were doing on average 50K a month. Now you're doing 100K a month. That's 50K in new revenue. I wouldn't go with just PPC because I know that PPC affects organic so significantly that if we killed your PPC, your organic would tank. And if we doubled our PPC, your organic would double. And as a result, I'm like, Amazon's attribution is not that accurate. So it's better off going as a total. And this is best suited.
I get that. Why not go on a cost per transaction or conversion, paid per conversion, and just do the math on it, because there's going to be a halo effect where you're going to have organic orders as well. Why don't agencies do that kind of transaction? Because I would think to the product owner that you can build in your profitability into that, as opposed to a percentage of that $50,000 in revenue. I guess the only caveat would be that the advertising has to remain a small enough percentage of the total revenue. Do you work that stuff into contracts?
Yeah, there's definitely a guardrail. There has to be a guardrail on like, percentage of new revenue, given that, let's say we're at a 4x return on ad spend right now, that we don't do anything under 3. And so it's like, okay, I get it. We have to scale you. There has to be that margin, because you can never scale without losing profitability. So it's like, okay, you can scale, lose a little bit of profitability, but then, you can't just go to like 1x return on ad spend and say, hey, we've scaled you.
You just said you can never scale without losing profitability. Do you really believe that? I mean, what if I'm just absolutely horrible at PPC and then I hired your company? You can do it better than I can.
Yeah. Yes. But here's the thing. For you to scale, there needs to be a test needs to happen, right? Because there's a certain number of keywords out there. Each one of them at a certain bid is going to get a certain return. That return is completely unknown to us. It could be a bad return, or it could be a good return. And there's one way to find out. And unfortunately, you have to pay to find out. So if you're at a 4x ROAS and I'm like, okay, I'm going to test 20 new keywords, there's no way you can stay at a 4x ROAS unless you nail those 20 keywords and they're all magically perfectly profitable. And so as a result, I think there's way too many brands that actually feel like, hey, we're doing a 4x ROAS. We want you to, they come to you and they say, we want you to scale us and not affect our profitability, our return on ad spend. Or if we can maintain this return on ad spend, scale us infinitely. I always get that. I'm like, this is the best thing ever, right? If I could just magically figure out the results of every single keyword, that's what we would do. We would only choose the ones that had a good return on ad spend. But you have to go through that phase of where you buy the data, you spend the $10 or $20 on that keyword, and then you figure out, is it profitable or is it not profitable? So there's always a factor of reduction in the return on ad spend.
I get that. How long does it take to sort of for you to learn about the brand and learn about the testing and scaling and seeing what's going to work and what doesn't work? Is it 1 month, 2 months, 3 months to really understand it?
No, I think it takes a month to understand the brand and know how things work. And then from there, it's an infinite cycle of buying data or running it for profitability. So it's up to you. So after 1 month, you tell me, we have a $10,000 budget. I want you to take 8,000 of that budget and run it and spend it on the keywords that are the most profitable. And that other 2,000, I want you to use that to identify new potential keywords that could be very profitable. And so we would take that to, let's say 2,000, maybe we'd identify 1,000. So we'd add that 1,000 to the 8,000. We'd now left with 9,000 profitable keywords. And then we have $1,000 left in the testing budget. Do you want to continue to test? Do you want to add another 1,000 on your spend? Or do you want to retest that 1,000 until you're left with everything is profitable and you're running on only 10,000 and no testing budget? And so that's the way to look at it. And the faster you spend money, the faster you're going to learn. It's that simple.
I like it. One thing I've come across over the years when I'm selling a business is, they may have hired an agency partway through last year and then they stopped 4 months later, because the advertising budget blew up and it didn't really generate a return on investment. That is nothing we can do in the ad back schedule about that expense. Because it's testing and people test all the time and the new owner will test as well. Therefore, it's not an ad back. But there is sometimes a setup fee. And I see agencies that will charge a setup fee to take the brand over and bring it in-house and get the ball rolling. How do you, and in certain situations that can be an ad back.
Yeah.
How do you feel about agencies that charge setup fees? What's the logic behind it? Does it make sense or does it not make sense to you?
Yeah, I think the setup fee makes sense. As much as obviously it's not attractive for a brand. I bet you that you can probably get away with the setup fee if you did a longer commitment. I think the problem with the reason the setup fee exists is because agencies have been pinched too much in the past by someone comes in, they say, okay, like let's start working. You work with this brand, and then 2 weeks later, they're like, oh, like our sales are going down. They freak out and then they leave. And you basically got your entire team started working on this brand. You're renaming campaigns, you're building portfolio, you're doing all of like the upfront work that is not like that steady state, like let's optimize and let's launch new campaigns sort of thing. And you got all hands on deck to work on this brand. And then it was all for nothing. And you basically, you got maybe a 1 month retainer where you actually lost money because the amount of labor involved was a lot. And so we actually calculate how much time and money it takes for each of our team members to, work on this brand. So we know on average, let's say it's going to take 8 hours or whatever, $1,000 to work on this brand every single month. And then sometimes the setup could be twice as much that time. And so you just add like that additional $1,000 as a setup fee, something like that. And so I think that's where the setup fee comes from. Now, if you're going to stay if you're locked in for like 6 months, the agency might be like, it's cool. We don't need a setup fee because we're gonna make our money back. I mean, like that 1,000 divided by 6 months we can waive it.
I mean, let me just go with the math that you just said, and I know that you're just ballparking numbers and just talking. But you just said, 8 hours, $1,000 a month, 8 hours a month of dedication. Did you mean 8 hours a week, or really did you mean 8 hours a month dedicated to the campaign? Because if you meant a month, that's $1,000, and you can hire a VA for $1,000 full time.
Yeah.
As long as, and then maybe you hire these consultants that you've talked about to set up SOPs for the VA. And you spend $1,000 on the consultants and then $1,000 a month on the VA, where you've got somebody dedicated 40 hours a week to your campaign versus an agency. Why the agency versus the VA route?
Yeah. So the 8 hours is a ballpark. So definitely don't quote me on that. I'm just giving an example of like, it might cost twice as much time for the team to work on the brand in the first month than it will on every other month, because you're kind of cleaning up the mess and making everything nice, building the dashboards, all that kind of stuff. Now, this is a very good question, because you have a very good option of, why don't I just hire a VA or hire someone skilled overseas and bring on a consultant to train them? This is a very, very, very good option. And you can do that. And that's kind of the route that I took, right? Because I didn't obviously become an agency by hiring an agency. I became an agency. Well, as a brand owner, I learned how to do everything myself. And then I built standard operating procedures. I trained someone and I spent many hours with them, showing them how to do things until they were able to figure some things out on their own. And I can kind of direct them and say, hey, like, I want you guys to do this and that. And then they were doing it. So that is definitely a valid route if you want to take it. And I think that's another option.
Now, before you go further, I want to state that I asked that question, but I want everybody in the audience to know that Quiet Light does not do their PPC in-house, right? We've got an external agency. We don't do Amazon ads, obviously, but we've got an external agency that we've hired, as opposed to going the route of a VA or bringing somebody internal. I just wanted to state that first. Continue.
No, that's definitely good. So I think that there is some pros and cons. The pros are that you have someone that is dedicated in your team full time. The cons are they're not going to be that same as the Toyota system, right? So you're not going to get the benefits of having like 5 people. Each one specializes in one thing, all working on your account, all really good at what they do, and kind of like sharing that, because you don't have economies of scale like an agency would do. You also don't have the benefits of the sharing of information across different brands. So we see so many things happen across so many different brands, and we're everyone is learning from everyone. You don't get that. But I mean, on the flip side, you could hire someone who does see that many brands, for example, like Thrazio's head of advertising, and they could consult you, because they do see, like, he probably sees like 200 different brands. And so he could kind of give you those learnings. So there are ways to go, different ways to go about it. It's kind of tough to say what should you do, right? Because it's all going to come down to, but are you going to be able to hold that person in your team accountable? Or, are you going to be able to find an agency that is an honest, hardworking agency? Because I think when you find a really good agency that is hustling, that's hardworking, that wants to keep your business, that is pouring different resources, over delivering because they care about their reputation, you'll have something that's better than a single person.
Yeah. Look at it. It comes down to individual choice, right?
Yeah.
You don't want to grow your business to the level that you become incompetent. If you're not great at managing people, you need to be real careful about whether you're going to choose to bring in VAs or employees versus outsourcing to agencies. So I believe it does come down to a personal choice and how you want to operate your business and what your goals are with the business. And it's up to the individual. At Quiet Light, we've chosen to go with an agency for our PPC. So totally understand that choice, as well as the choice to bring it in-house. Talk to me about some of the other things that people should ask agencies if they're going to hire one, or the mistakes that you've seen people make, and how to avoid them.
Yeah, asking how do you measure success, I think, is one of the most important questions that you need to ask right up front, because your definition of success could be one thing and their definition is another thing. So a lot of times I tell people when they sign on, I say, listen, PPC is, we're going to show your product to as many people as possible, and we're going to get a lot of them that are going to click on it. Now, if they choose not to click on the product, even though, so we just encountered yesterday, I had a conversation with someone. We were talking about supplements, and we took him from like 5,000 impressions a day to 25,000 impressions a day. So 5 times more. But his click-through rate is sub 0.1%. And so people just don't want to click on the listing. So at the beginning we said, hey, like, we've noticed that this happens. If it happens, this is out of our control. It's just, we are doing our job in terms of advertising your product. It's people don't want to kind of walk through the door and click on the product. And then the second half of this is, hey, we're advertising effectively. We're showing your product to a lot of people that are clicking on it. You can see that we took you from 100 sessions a week to 1,000 sessions a week. And sessions basically means unique visitors coming into the listing, but your conversion rate is 5%. And so we need 20 people to come into the listing to convert. And let's say at a $50 cost for each person to come into the listing, your cost per acquisition is $12.50. If you have a $10,
does an agency like yours that focuses on PPC also help them with the ads themselves, or testing new ads, or is that something else that they come up with?
So the ads on Amazon, the good thing is majority of them are non-creative. They're just, you're advertising the listing. So that's sponsored products advertising. There is video and headline search ads which have creative, but that's a very small part of the business, I would say. The majority of the ads is coming from people searching for a keyword, and then your product shows very natively as if it would an organic search result, and would have a tiny word that says sponsored on it. Or if you click on a listing and you scroll down, it'll say sponsored products related to this item, and it'll show other competitors. So that's the majority of. But
there's still ways to improve the conversion rate once they click on the ad itself, whether it's improving your bullet points or your photos or your descriptions and things of that nature. Do you not get involved with that at all, or is that something that you would refer one of your clients out to somebody that's an expert in that area?
Yeah. So there's, let's say, 4 main areas where you can improve, right? The general listing, which we'll say like title, bullet points, questions on the listing, simple things like that. That's something we can get involved in. It doesn't need a whole lot of expertise. It just needs like simple know-how. Pricing. This is something that, again, is not too hard because it's just split testing pricing and seeing what happens to conversion rate. Then there's the other 2 that are the big ones. Creative, which I don't want to say that we're a creative specialist agency. Right? We're all of us are engineers, and we're really good at data analytics and interpretation. So we stay in our lane, and we refer to like Mindful Goods is our like number 1 creative person. And we like to refer out to her. Her team uses PickFu and they do split testing, and they come up with really good creative. And then the 4th one is reviews. And this is something that no one really can touch because it's a huge liability. I mean, except the brand owner.
What's Mindful? What was the name of the group you just mentioned?
Goods. Mindful Goods. Daniela. Her name is Daniela. Mindful Goods.
I just went to mindfulgoods.com, but it's that's not it, is it?
Yeah, I think it's mindfulgoods.co. Let me see.
Fair enough. I mean, if we're going to mention somebody, we might as well give out the URL, right? Yeah, Amazon listings done better for e-commerce brands. Mindfulgoods.co. So check that out, folks, if you can. And I do see some images there and some folks there as well. Okay. In terms of the commitment, how long? I know you mentioned 1 month before, but realistically, if I've got a business doing $1 million a year in revenue, my profitability is a couple of $100,000 a year. You could break that down to, on a monthly basis, what I'm doing. How and I'm launching new SKUs, or I want to scale up. If we're talking seriously, how long should I commit to you? How much time and effort should I be putting into this with you as an agency, or any agency that I'm going to talk to? It doesn't seem to me like 1 month is enough based upon my experience. Now, granted, we need to have what you said, guardrails, so that you're not taking my budget from $10,000 a month to $20,000 a month with, no additional profitability. Mm-hmm. Obviously with guardrails that are put in place. Ideally, if you could just snap your fingers and have everybody say they're going to commit to you for X amount of months so that you can fully prove that you're able to scale. What is that time frame?
I think 3 months. And I think there's a few things that you can do to in like, I mean, 3 months is 3 months, right? But you can have a bad 3 months where your communication is bad and you're not giving people what they need and those sorts of things. Or you can have an amazing 3 months. And I think you always want to set up the agency for success and then give them 3 months to show what they can do. Now, the things that you can do to set them up for success is, number one, make everything very clear for them in terms of what your products are. And then, basically like what's going on, some history, things like that. Number two, have a very clear goal. You can't have a goal of, I want you to double my sales and improve my profitability at the same time. It's like you're trying to bulk and get shredded at the same time. You can't really do the two.
This is coming from an MMA fighter, folks. So we're talking about bulking in terms of weight and defining your muscle, losing body fat as well.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
They're going to require two different things. One is going to require some extra cardio, cutting down your calories. The other one is going to require, less cardio and eating more. So what I would do is I would say in the first 30 days, I'd like you to clean up what you see is obvious. It can be cleaned up. Remove all of the dead weight, basically any of the keywords that are spending money, not generating sales, all that stuff. So what I should see is my sales should be relatively the same. My sessions should maybe drop a little bit. My spend should drop and my return on ad spend should increase. And again, nothing like crazy. We're just cleaning up here. So that should happen in the first month. And then in the second month, I would say spend 6 weeks growing and scaling. So I should see that spend is going up. And obviously you define it. You say in the next 6 weeks, take me from spending $1,000 a day to spending $1,800 a day as profitably as possible, or $1,600 a day. And they should be able to launch new campaigns, test new keywords, all this stuff over the course of 6 weeks, increase your sessions. So you can start measuring, how are my sales going up? How is my spend going up? How are my sessions going up? Because that's the direct kind of correlation to spend. How is my cost of each session? So am I spending more to get people into the listing, or is it relatively the same, maybe just a little bit more? And are my sales going up? And if you see that positive trend, you know that they're doing something good. And then it'll take maybe a couple of weeks, 2 to 3 weeks at the end, to kind of reduce anything that wasn't working and say, okay, let's establish a new benchmark. So at the end of the 3 months, you have 2 weeks where they cut down any of the stuff that didn't work. So now you're left with, old spend, new spend, old sales, new sales, old return on ad spend, new return on ad spend. And that is a very easy way to say, over 3 months, what have you guys done? You did the cleanup. So, when we started, you cleaned everything up. You started from a fresh slate. We benchmarked. How was I before we used you? How was I before you scaled? How was I after you scaled? And it tells the full story.
Excellent. And how many conversations, how often are clients communicating with agencies during this initial 3-month period? Daily, weekly, monthly?
I think it should be daily. I really think that it should be daily. And definitely in the first month, I personally push people to talk to us daily so we can align. Like we're getting aligned every day for 30 days. And it's like, okay, we've had, let's say 20 working days to make sure we're on the same page. If we're not, it's either the agency is bad or the person is not communicating. And you, as a brand, you want to leave any, let's say a relationship with an agency, you want to leave that knowing that you did your best and that it didn't work out, not because of your actions. Because, thinking back when I was a brand, I've definitely done some things where you can always throw the blame, right? I like to take full accountability for everything, but I used to, sometimes throw the blame at the agency. And now I'm like, you know what? There was a certain amount of things that I could have done that then after, it not working, I could have been like, I can sleep well at night knowing that I did everything I can possible to make this work and they messed it up.
Excellent. I like it. We're going to wrap up there. I'm looking at a couple of locations where people can get educated on their own. It's triviumco.com blog. There's a blog there where you're talking about a lot of different information, and also on LinkedIn. I'm seeing, found you on LinkedIn, Mina Elias on LinkedIn. There's a lot of videos and training that you do right there. You share it quite a bit.
Yeah, I have a ton of value coming out on LinkedIn. And by the way, I'm sure a lot of people here are members of Helium 10. I have a full PPC training course on Helium 10. So if you're a member there, it's the PPC Academy, Helium 10 PPC Academy. And it's 35 videos, many hours of me breaking every single concept of Amazon advertising down with over the shoulder, like me doing things in Excel, me changing things in Campaign Manager. So hopefully it's the last advertising Amazon PPC training that you need. But that's a huge resource. It took
that's how you
hours.
become the mechanic. You watch that instead of becoming a mechanic, you watch that. And then you can communicate effectively with some expertise behind you with the different agencies that you may be interviewing. I like it.
Yeah.
Mina, sorry. Ways to people to reach out to you most effectively? Is it an email, website? How do you want them to find you?
Instagram at the Mina Elias, and then LinkedIn Mina Elias. Those are, I think, the best two places to find me.
Excellent. And we'll share links for those things, folks. Mina, thanks for your time today. Greatly appreciate it.
Thank you so much.